He demanded a salute to prove his rank, but the Royal Guard's response taught him that true discipline honors the crown, not ego. On a misty April morning in 2025, the hallowed grounds of Buckingham Palace bore witness to a clash of military traditions that would echo far beyond its historic walls. Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Carver of the U.S. Army, a decorated officer with a career forged in the crucible of modern warfare, arrived expecting deference to his rank. But when he demanded a salute from Guard Thomas Langley, a steadfast member of the Queen's Guard, he encountered an unyielding wall of discipline rooted in centuries of royal tradition. What unfolded wasn't just a moment of confrontation. It was a profound lesson in mutual respect, military honor, and the delicate balance of international alliances. Langley's response didn't merely silence Carver. It captivated a global audience, sparked debates on military protocol, and reminded us that true discipline isn't about dominance. It's about duty. Want to dive into this unforgettable story of pride, protocol, and principle? First, hit that subscribe button to join Palace Chronicles for more tales of royal history, and comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Let's step into the heart of Buckingham Palace and uncover what really happened on that fateful day. At precisely 9 a.m. on April 23, 2025, a convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled through the ornate gates of Buckingham Palace, their diplomatic flags fluttering in the crisp morning breeze. A delicate mist clung to the air, casting an ethereal glow over the palace's pale stone facade, its Georgian architecture a testament to nearly 3 centuries of royal legacy. The meticulously tended gardens, bursting with spring blooms, scarlet tulips, golden daffodils, and delicate white roses, stood in vibrant contrast to the muted grey of the cobblestone courtyard. The grounds buzzed with a diverse crowd, tourists from Japan snapping photos, a school group from London on a field trip, and a handful of dignitaries awaiting the day's events. Their excited chatter formed a lively backdrop, punctuated by the occasional click of a camera shutter and the distant cooing of pigeons perched on the palace's wrought-iron gates. The motorcade, bearing the insignia of the United States, signaled the arrival of an American military delegation for the annual NATO Defense Summit, a gathering of allied forces to strategize on global security. As the vehicles came to a halt near the visitors' entrance, Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Carver, 45, emerged from the lead SUV. His U.S. Army uniform, a crisp olive green, was adorned with a chest full of medals earned across 2 decades of service, including the Bronze Star for valor in Iraq and a Purple Heart from a roadside bomb in Syria. His sharp blue eyes surveyed the palace grounds with a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled impatience, his square jaw set in a line that spoke of a man accustomed to command. Adjusting his cap, he muttered to Major Ethan Brooks, 38, who stepped out beside him, "All this ceremony for a strategy meeting. We'd have done this quicker at Fort Bragg, without the royal fanfare." Brooks, a quieter officer with a penchant for diplomacy, nodded absently, his brown eyes already drawn to a figure standing sentinel near the palace gates. A royal guard in full ceremonial regalia, a striking symbol of British tradition. Guard Thomas Langley, 30, stood at his post with the unyielding precision of a man who had mastered the art of stillness. His scarlet tunic blazed against the grey stone backdrop, its gold-embroidered epaulettes and polished brass buttons catching the faint morning light. A white crossbelt with gold detailing stretched across his chest, and his white-gloved hands gripped an SA-80 rifle with a fixed bayonet. The black barrel a stark contrast to his vibrant uniform. Atop his head sat a towering black bearskin cap, its gold chin strap glinting faintly, casting a shadow across the cobblestones. Langley's hazel eyes were fixed forward in a disciplined 1,000-yard stare, a technique honed through years of service that allowed him to remain impervious to distractions. The crowd watched in awe, some whispering about the guard's stoic presence, others capturing the moment on their phones, unaware that this ordinary morning was about to become extraordinary. Thomas Langley was no stranger to pressure. A veteran of 5 combat deployments, he had earned the conspicuous Gallantry Cross for bravery during a 2022 joint US-UK mission in Afghanistan, where he led a squad through enemy territory to secure a downed helicopter under heavy fire. His personnel file, locked away in the Ministry of Defense, contained glowing commendations from American commanders who had witnessed his unbreakable focus in the chaos of battle. One U.S. Special Forces captain had written, "Langley's discipline under fire is unmatched. His ability to maintain clarity in crisis saved lives." Those same qualities, mental fortitude, emotional control, and an unwavering commitment to duty, made him a perfect fit for the Queen's Guard, where the ceremonial role demanded not just physical endurance, but a profound psychological resilience. Standing motionless for hours, often under the scrutiny of thousands, required the same focus he'd relied on in combat zones. Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Carver, however, saw none of this as he approached Langley's post, his polished boots clicking on the cobblestones. Carver's career had been defined by action, leading troops in Iraq, coordinating airstrikes in Syria, and training recruits at Fort Benning. He viewed military service through the lens of practicality, valuing adaptability and responsiveness over what he saw as outdated pageantry. Circling Langley with the critical eye of a drill instructor, he examined the guard's uniform, his tone a mix of grudging admiration and mockery. "Nice costume," he said loudly, ensuring the nearby tourists could hear. "Ever worn that hat in a firefight? I bet it'd last 5 seconds in a desert sandstorm." Major Ethan Brooks, sensing the potential for an incident, stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. "Colonel, we should stick to the schedule. The summit briefing starts soon." Carver waved him off, his blue eyes narrowing as he studied Langley's bearskin cap, its black fur slightly ruffled by the breeze. "I'm just appreciating the craftsmanship, Major. But let's be honest, this is theater, not soldiering." Langley remained an immovable statue, his 1,000-yard stare piercing through Carver, his breathing so controlled that not even the white crossbelt across his chest betrayed a hint of movement. A young girl in the crowd, part of the London school group, tugged at her teacher's sleeve and whispered, "Why doesn't he move?" "Is he a real person?" The teacher smiled, replying softly, "He's a real soldier, sweetheart. He's just very, very disciplined." But Carver's dismissive attitude was already sowing the seeds of a confrontation, his words a challenge to the very traditions Langley was sworn to uphold. The American delegation followed their guide, Peter Hammond, 50, a seasoned palace historian with a deep knowledge of its traditions, through the palace's gardens. Hammond, dressed in a grey suit that matched the misty sky, gestured toward a bed of heritage roses, their delicate white petals a nod to the White Rose of York, a symbol of the royal lineage dating back to the Wars of the Roses in the 15th century. These roses, Hammond explained, his voice warm with pride, were planted in 1762 to commemorate the birth of King George III's first child. They've been tended by the same family of gardeners for over 250 years. The delegation listened politely, some snapping photos, but Carver's attention was elsewhere, his gaze repeatedly drifting to the royal guards stationed at strategic points around the grounds, their scarlet tunics a vivid contrast to the muted tones of the palace stonework. Interrupting Hammond mid-sentence, Carver's voice cut through the serene moment. "These guards, they're just for show, right? Tourist bait to keep the crowds entertained?" His tone carried a hint of disdain, as if the very idea of ceremonial duty offended his practical sensibilities. Hammond hesitated, his diplomatic smile faltering for a moment, but before he could respond, Colonel James Harper, 52, the senior U.S. officer in the delegation, stepped in. Harper, a tall man with a commanding presence, his olive-green uniform adorned with the insignia of a full colonel, spoke with measured authority. "They're active soldiers, Nathan. The Queen's Guard rotates between ceremonial duties here and combat deployments abroad. Many have seen action in the same theaters we have." Carver raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Combat soldiers playing statues. In the army, we prioritize real training. Live fire exercises, tactical drills, not standing around for photo ops." His words drew a few murmurs from the crowd, some tourists nodding in agreement, others frowning at his lack of deference. Across the garden, Captain Edward Grayson, 40 head of the Royal Guard unit on duty that day, observed the exchange with growing concern. Grayson, a 10-year veteran of Guard command, had a keen instinct for spotting trouble before it escalated. His navy uniform was crisp, his posture rigid as he watched Carver's gestures toward Langley's post, his mind already racing through contingency protocols. He knew Langley's discipline was ironclad. 3 months prior, Langley had led a training exercise for new guards, earning praise for his ability to maintain composure under provocation. But Carver's behavior was pushing boundaries, and Grayson sensed a storm brewing.
At 10:15 a.m., as the delegation paused to admire the palace's western facade, a masterpiece of neoclassical design commissioned by King George IV in the 1820s, Carver saw his opportunity. Slipping away from the group with the stealth of a seasoned soldier, he strode across the cobblestone courtyard toward Langley's post, his movements deliberate and purposeful. A small crowd of tourists gathered nearby, sensing the unusual interaction. Most visitors to Buckingham Palace adhered to the unspoken rule of maintaining a respectful distance from the guards, but Carver positioned himself directly in Langley's line of sight, a clear violation of protocol designed to provoke a reaction. "Impressive stillness," Carver said, his voice loud enough to carry across the courtyard, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But in the army, we train to engage threats, not ignore them. A soldier who can't respond to his surroundings is a liability, not an asset." He circled Langley slowly, his polished boots echoing on the cobblestones, inspecting the guard's uniform with the critical eye of a man who'd spent years evaluating troops. "This red coat," he continued, gesturing to Langley's scarlet tunic, "practical for combat, or just for postcards? I'd give it 10 minutes in a jungle before it's shredded." Langley remained an immovable statue, his 1,000-yard stare cutting through Carver, his discipline a silent rebuke to the American officer's taunts. Albert Reed, 72, a retired British officer who had served in the Falklands War, stepped forward from the crowd, his blazer adorned with medals that told the story of a distinguished career. His voice was quiet but firm, carrying the weight of experience. "Sir, these guards have seen combat just like you. Many have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, even alongside your own forces. This ceremonial duty isn't a sign of weakness, it's a testament to their discipline. Show some respect." Carver turned, his blue eyes assessing Reed with a quick glance at his medals, but dismissed him with a wave. "I'm discussing military efficiency, not disrespect. A soldier who spends hours practicing standing still isn't honing the tactical flexibility modern warfare demands. That's a fact, not an insult." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement with Carver, others shaking their heads, the tension in the air palpable as the confrontation began to draw more attention. By 10:45 a.m., as the delegation prepared to witness the changing of the guard, a daily ritual that had been performed at Buckingham Palace since 1660, Carver broke away again, this time with a deliberate intent that even Colonel Harper's sharp command couldn't halt. "Colonel Carver, stay with the group." Harper called, his voice sharp, but Carver's strides were unrelenting, his focus locked on Langley's post. A larger crowd had gathered now, mid-morning tour groups arriving with their guidebooks and cameras, their chatter falling silent as they sensed the brewing conflict. Carver positioned himself mere inches from Langley, violating the respectful distance that even the most curious tourists maintained, his olive-green uniform a stark contrast to Langley's scarlet tunic. "In the army, we respond to superiors," Carver said loudly, his voice carrying across the courtyard, ensuring the crowd heard every word. "A soldier who can't acknowledge a superior officer is failing the most basic tenet of military courtesy." He leaned in closer, his face inches from Langley's, his voice dropping to a low, provocative tone that still carried to those nearby. "You ever been in real combat, soldier, or is this red coat your biggest battle? I outrank you, show me you're more than a statue." Langley remained motionless, his 1,000-yard stare an impenetrable shield, his breathing so controlled that not even the faint rise and fall of his chest betrayed a reaction. The crowd held its breath, a mix of awe and apprehension on their faces. A young American tourist, a college student on her first trip abroad, whispered to her friend, "Is he allowed to do that? He's so close." Her friend shook her head, clutching her guidebook, which clearly stated the rules: do not approach or touch the guards. Colonel Harper broke through the crowd, his expression a mix of frustration and urgency. "Colonel Carver, rejoin us now." "That's an order," he barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. But Carver's focus remained on Langley, his blue eyes burning with a mix of challenge and expectation, as if daring the guard to break his composure. The moment hung heavy in the air, the weight of centuries of tradition clashing with Carver's modern military mindset, setting the stage for a confrontation that would soon captivate the world. At 11 a.m., as the changing of the guard ceremony unfolded, a meticulously choreographed display of military precision that had drawn crowds to Buckingham Palace for generations, Carver seized his moment. Slipping away from the delegation once more, he moved with purposeful strides back to Langley's post, the crowd parting instinctively as he approached. The ceremony was in full swing, with other guards marching in perfect unison, their polished boots echoing on the cobblestones, their scarlet tunics a vivid splash of color against the misty backdrop. But Carver's focus was singular, his target clear, Guard Thomas Langley, who stood as still as ever, his discipline unshaken by the earlier provocations. Carver positioned himself directly in front of Langley, blocking his line of sight, a third violation of palace protocol in a single morning. Raising his voice to address the crowd, he projected the authority of a senior officer accustomed to commanding attention. "Let's talk military protocol, ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his tone that of a lecturer addressing a classroom. Across NATO forces, there exists a universal understanding of the chain of command. Regardless of national differences, military courtesy demands that junior ranks salute superior officers. It's a fundamental principle of Allied operations, one that ensures cohesion and respect across borders. He pointed to the insignia on his uniform, his lieutenant colonel's eagle gleaming in the faint light. Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Carver, U.S. Army, NATO Joint Command. I've led troops in Iraq, coordinated joint operations in Syria, and trained soldiers across 3 continents. He turned to Langley, his voice rising with command. "And you?" "A sergeant whose primary skill is standing still." Carver reached out suddenly, touching the sleeve of Langley's scarlet tunic between his thumb and forefinger, a clear violation of palace rules that drew a collective gasp from the crowd. "Wool," he remarked, his tone making the word sound like an insult. "Impractical in combat, too heavy, too hot." His hand then brushed the barrel of Langley's SA-80 rifle, a second violation that sent a ripple of shock through the onlookers. A young tourist, the same American student, whispered loudly, "You're not supposed to touch them. It says so in the guidebook." Her friend nodded, clutching her camera, her eyes wide with disbelief. Palace security personnel moved closer, their expressions tense but restrained, aware of the diplomatic implications of intervening with a visiting officer. Carver straightened to his full height, assuming a formal military bearing that signaled he was about to issue an official directive. "Guard," he declared, his voice carrying the unmistakable command tone of a senior officer, "I am Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Carver, United States Army, NATO Joint Command authorized. Military protocol across Allied forces requires junior personnel to render appropriate respect to senior off." In a moment of perfect precision, Guard Thomas Langley acted. His white-gloved hand moved swiftly, removing Carver's fingers from his rifle. "Sir," Langley said, his voice crisp and authoritative, "you are in violation of palace protocol. Physical contact with a guard or his equipment is a Category B security breach." Carver froze, stunned by the response. Langley continued, his gaze now locked on Carver's. "Palace standing orders supersede NATO chain of command on these grounds. Standing Order 162 states that the Queen's Guard answers to the Crown, not visiting officers. My duty is to the sovereign first, sir, and that duty requires maintaining position and protocol." He stepped back, resuming his stance. "I respectfully request you return to the designated area and refrain from further contact." Captain Edward Grayson approached, his tone diplomatic but firm. "Lieutenant Colonel Carver, I'm Captain Grayson, Guard Commander. There seems to be a misunderstanding." Carver snapped, "Your guard broke position to lecture me." Grayson replied, he followed Standing Order 162, Paragraph 3, "Guards may respond to security breaches with minimal action. It's protocol." Grayson explained, "On palace grounds, the Crown's authority supersedes visiting ranks. Langley's oath is to the sovereign, not NATO." Colonel Harper arrived, visibly frustrated. "Carver, you've caused a diplomatic incident. Return to the delegation, now." Grayson added, "Langley served alongside U.S. forces in Afghanistan, earning commendations for bravery. His discipline here mirrors his combat focus." As the delegation continued, Carver's isolation grew. His fellow officers distanced themselves, offering Langley respectful nods as they passed his post. Major Brooks murmured, "They're soldiers, not props." A U.S. general, who'd stayed silent, spoke up. Langley's response was disciplined and effective, tactical, even. He achieved his objective without escalation. Carver's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his reflection in the motorcade window showing a man grappling with his misjudgment. In the distance, Langley stood firm, his scarlet tunic a symbol of unwavering duty, the crowd now viewing him with newfound respect. The incident at Buckingham Palace sparked discussions about military respect across borders. True discipline, the story showed, isn't about demanding compliance, it's about understanding and honoring different traditions. Guard Thomas Langley's steadfast adherence to protocol reminded everyone that respect isn't imposed, it's earned through mutual understanding. What does respect look like when military cultures collide? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you seen someone disregard another country's traditions, and how should allies navigate these differences? Like this video, subscribe to Palace Chronicles, and hit the notification bell for more stories of duty and honor. Share this with someone who values military tradition, and check out our related videos on your screen now. We'll see you tomorrow with another tale of service and respect. Until then, honor the traditions that unite us.